Today's video, I'm going to tell you the top 5 law firm interviews don't. In the past year, I attended a number of assessment centers, approximately 4 to 5 at different global law firms. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what are the top mistakes I personally made and tell you a bit more about what you can avoid at a legal interview. So if you have an assessment center coming up, I think this video will be very helpful. So the first don't for you guys is that don't ignore these casual questions asked by the partner at an interview or assessment center. For example, this question was asked by so many partners and associates during my assessment centers. What other firms have you applied to apart from our firm? So at first, you may feel like this question is just another general question. However, this is a mistake. By knowing your preferences and the type of firms you have also applied it to, the partner can actually know whether you genuinely want to work for this particular firm or you just apply to a bunch of other irrelevant law firms, other law firms that have nothing in common with the firm you're actually interviewing at. This is a very important indication of your motivation to work for that particular law firm. So they want to test you whether you're applying to similar firms in terms of the culture or practice area strengths or the internationality. So for example, if you're now interviewing at a magic circle firm or a giant international law firm, and then you suddenly also mention that you applied to other smaller size law firm, that might indicate inconsistency. Say, if you are now interviewing at law firms like Baker McKenzie, then it might be more logical for you to mention law firms like Lawton Rose Fulbright, Dantons. Those firms, for example, they are using a very similar international strategy. They have a better global brand. So this is a very important question for you to prepare in advance of your interview. Of course, those firms are not exactly the same, but I would say you need to pick a set of firms that share a common values, or at least they are having a similar structure or international strategy, so that you can convince the interviewer that you actually carefully select this group of firms to apply for, not just a random decision to apply to their firm. That being said, there is one exception. If you previously worked for that firm, that experience itself could justify your choice. So here's the technique. When you answer this question, mention the firms that you apply to that are similar to the firm you're interviewing at. Also, you may add 1 or 2 firms that are a bit more irrelevant or dissimilar to the firm you're interviewing at. Then back it up by sharing your work experiences at those firms and how those experiences shape your decision. That will give the interviewer a very impressive answer, showing that you carefully consider why you should apply to this firm or that firm. So the second don't for you guys is don't answer any question if you haven't given it much thought. This is extremely important. Basically, you need to take the time to think about the question you are asked. You need to realize that in most situations, silence is your friend, not your enemy. In the first few assessment centers I attended, I actually tended to speak really fast. Whenever I was asked a question, I just tried to respond as soon as possible. The problem was that I often gave an answer in a less structural manner, which indicates that I'm not a very articulate person. Answering a question before giving it much thought is potentially the worst thing you could ever do at an interview. Imagine if you haven't thought about that topic in depth. How could you give a very convincing and concise answer? And what you're going to do is just to keep speaking, keep explaining without a structure. You will end up speaking nonsense. And this is particularly the case if you were asked a very difficult or very strange question. For example, there was this one assessment center I had. They asked me this random question based on my CV. They looked at my CV and saw my publication records on the doctrine of frustration in contract law. In case some of you guys don't know, the frustration law means that if there's a change in circumstances that radically change the situation or the background facts underlying a contract, that means the contract could potentially be frustrated. The associate actually asked this random question. Because of Brexit, recently there are more firms face a change in their rent So do you think there will be a frustration of contract because of Brexit? So he basically asked a random question that I think he probably didn't know the answer either, because I checked, he probably wasn't an expert in contract law. So the purpose of him asking this question was not to get a correct answer from me, because there's no right or wrong answer. Purpose of asking this question was to test my ability to deal with a difficult situation and to respond in a very stressful scenario. That's probably why he asked me that question. So what I did next was not to answer the question immediately. I actually asked him, "This was a great question. Do you mind to give me a minute or two to think about it?" That may sound a little bit weird for you because, okay, it's a bit awkward, right? I suddenly asked for extra time for a question. Does it show that I am not a competent person? I actually think the opposite. Imagine if you're a lawyer and you need to help a client to deal with his or her question. The client suddenly asks you a very random or difficult question that you don't actually know the answer right away. What will you do? You actually need more time to summarize your answer. So what they want to see is someone who actually think carefully and think twice before answering a question. That actually shows that you can think on your own feet and you're not afraid of taking your time of answering a difficult question. That's an ability. Your strategy should be asking for extra time and also maybe drink the glass of water in front of you that help you to calm down a little bit. So what you need to do in that 1 minute is to figure out what kind of things you want to say. You don't need to have a perfect answer, but at least define your answer into 1 or 2 aspects so that you give a very structural answer. Also think of the topic sentence and the concluding sentence you're going to say. And I personally use this technique in my successful application as well, and I can see that when I did this, like taking my time to answer my question, the associate actually made notes. I'm pretty sure that was a positive comment. Otherwise, I wouldn't get a training contract in that case. So I'm really recommending you guys to use this approach. Take your time, and silence is definitely your friend. So the third don't try to second guess what the interviewers want to hear. This is particularly the case if you are asked about questions like why commercial law or why applying to this particular law firms. Many people try to please the interviewers or give a very textbook-alike answer, talking about their practice area strength, talking about their internationality, how many offices they have, the kind of deals they have been working on, which are all good things. However, what's more important is to showcase you as a person to the firm. The fact that you are invited to an assessment center or interview is because they think you're already good enough on paper. You're a good candidate compared to 1,000 other candidates. So you already passed that threshold of showing your understanding of the firm or your research about the firm. What they want to see is your true motivation. I remember a day before my assessment center, I actually had this coffee chat with one of the trainees at the firm. And he was really nice to actually have the meeting with me before my training contract interview because I was so nervous. And I tried to explain my answer of why London and why this particular law firm. What he told me is this: the answers you just gave me were amazing, but just try to show a bit of your passion. You've been waiting for this training contract for so long. So you need to show that to the firm. You need to show to the firm that you really want to work for them. And sometimes this is what makes a lawyer or interviewer want to hire you. You don't need a long story. What you need is to show your experiences. When I was asked about the question of why London, why I choose UK to start my legal career, for example, why commercial law, I actually got a little bit emotional.
But I bet you what, I know how to find the answer.
I got emotional because I talk about my past experiences, how I grown up in Hong Kong, and ever since I start my education in the UK for that 1 year, I realized the number of the people I met from all over the world. I realized how every time I interact with them, I learn a bit more about myself and also them. And that diverse and cultural environment is what I'm striving for when it comes to working in a particular place. I basically just show them that how I explore different legal markets, going to different open days, like 10, 12 open days for less than 5 months, to show that I really worked so hard to get to where I am now, which is definitely my genuine emotion as well, because I've waited for so long for this moment. That's why when they first heard my answer, they definitely could feel that passion and that desire to work for them. I think that's probably one of the most important things you can show at an interview. So the fourth fourth don't is that don't bring up any concepts or ideas that you're not familiar with in case study exercise, assessment centered, or interviewed. First of all, you need to realize one thing, especially in partner interview or case study exercise. Sometimes the partner may discuss the case study exercise with you. They're not trying to trick you. They're not assuming that you're going to know everything. So when you don't know something, say that you don't know something. So what they're actually looking for is the fact that you realize that you don't know something, but you try to reach a conclusion based on analytical skills, based on how you analyze the problems, the aspects, and the perspectives you consider. In one of my very first assessment centers, I mentioned this experience several times actually. I was asked to do a case study exercise, and there were terms like angel investors, private equity. I actually know about the term private equity a bit at that time. I think I could kind of explain it. However, I wasn't really sure about the term angel investor. So during my interview, when I explained, I mentioned like angel investors and private equity funds. The partner suddenly asked me, what do those terms mean? So basically, I had a difficult time explaining those two terms. So remember, don't make the same mistake as I did. That will make a very bad impression of you. Like, yeah, so what were you trying to do? Were you just trying to, throwing out some random legal jargons? In case if they actually ask you something that you're not aware of, try to draw their attention to something that you're actually aware of. For example, when they asked me about angel investor, I didn't know what it means, right? Back then. So what I did was to draw their attention to something I know. I literally tell them that, okay, I wasn't very sure what angel investors mean in this particular context, but I'm more aware of private equity funds because I learned a bit about it during my master's degree. So I just kept on explaining what private equity funds are. In that case, at least I can kind of compensate for my misunderstanding of the term like angel investor and try to showcase my strength, which is private equity. Actually, just an additional point. That also means that you kind of need to familiarize yourself with some jargons or technical knowledge before going into the assessment centers. As I said, those terms like private equity, M&A, angel investors, you at least need to have a basic understanding of it if you want to perform well in an assessment center. Other than that, you also need to know how to read a balance sheet of a company. Because I remember there was one assessment center I was asked to evaluate whether the company has a good future prospect, and I was asked to kind of analyze the balance sheet. At that time, I had no idea what it was. Like I literally said something like the firm would perform badly in the future. However, the partner kind of questioned me and said, actually, when you look at that data, it may mean that this firm will be performing well. However, I didn't really know the implication of the balance sheet, so I had no ability to engage in the discussion with him. That was also my problem back then. So the final don't for law firm interviews, particularly I would say for case study exercise, is that don't try to analyze the case from a strictly legal perspective. That was the first mistake I made when I first did my case study exercise at assessment center. I've always been a law student. So all the things I can think of are legal issues the first time, when I analyze a case study exercise. I even marked down okay, so this is a financing issues. Which law may be relevant. I try to analyze a lot about the legal issues. I remember at the end, they never asked me anything legal at all in the assessment center or in the case study exercise. They asked me really random stuff, how I was going to market that particular product for the company, or what are the creative names I could think of for that particular product for the company. That's why people say you need to have commercial awareness. It's not only about the commercial business news, it's just the fact that whether you can apply it to the business you're dealing with. Because you need to know that lawyers are dealing with clients on a daily basis, and the clients are businesses. They're usually big companies in a different industry or sectors. So what they need to know is to know the sector the client is operating in so that they can give advice that is tailored to the client's sector. Because you need to think from the client's perspective, which not too many law students can do that. That's why in the assessment center, try not to think from a strictly legal perspective. Think about the commercial considerations. I would share with you some financial frameworks or commercial awareness frameworks you can use in your case study exercise. so that whenever you look at the case, try to think from all those perspectives rather than strictly legal perspective. Some assessment centers, they divide into case study for law students or case study for non-law students. In that case, you may need to know a bit about the legal issues, but in general, I would say they wish you know more about the commercial issues. Those are the 5 don'ts I want to share with you for your law firm interviews or assessment centers. I know how hard it is, to perform well at an assessment center. It's just so stressful, and there's so many other candidates. They all look so amazing. You just, a little bit, sometimes you get a little bit insecure, but I think it's a normal thing. We are all just trying hard to showcase the best version of ourselves. Try to focus on your own. Don't think about other candidates, how good or bad they are, because at the end of the day, you are the only one who need to perform well, and you are the only one who need to be confident about yourself. So again, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up or share this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to do a lot of videos during this period, and I will release on a weekly basis. So I want to ensure that every Sunday you guys have one video on anything about legal career, etc. Click the notification bell so that you get notified when I upload a new video every weekend. And follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn, or message me with any other questions. I will try to respond as soon as possible, because I probably will start my training contract next month, and I'm not sure about my schedule at the moment, but keep an eye on it. I'll see you guys next time.